Represent Lamoille 1 still. It's my second biennium. And my second biennium on this committee. My pretty much childhood and most all my active life has been working in the woods. And I still do. I'm an independent logging contractor. And I bring, and quite a lifetime involvement with conservation, forest ecology and rural planning, starting back in Windham County, 1968. Anyway, so I bring my love of the working lands and my concern for the working lands, both ag and forestry, and obviously food production resiliency as very critical values to the state of Vermont. And I'm really excited to work with all of you in this committee and be back on this. All right.
Chairman Durfee, I'm Richard Nelson, dairyman from Orleans County. I represent the town of Derby. And also all agricultural and land use issues in the state of Vermont. As far as I'm concerned, I've been farming my whole life. Been involved in a lot of different aspects of agriculture. And really believe that it takes all agriculture working together to uphold our infrastructure and keep the working lands that the state so cherishes open and working.
And I'm Michelle Boslin. I'm just starting my third term as a state rep. I represent Windham 3, which is my hometown of Westminster, and also Rockingham and Brookline. And I don't have an extensive resume in terms of farming, but I do have family members. I have an aunt and uncle that ran dairy farms my whole life that I've been visiting since I was a little kid. And my husband and I would say are hobby gardeners. So we have a pretty extensive garden, and I am very interested in cultivating food and buying food at farmers markets and all that kind of thing. So I would say I'm an active, interested farm sympathizer.
You wouldn't know the Caulfield, which Caulfield?
No?
No, okay. Yeah, I'm Greg Burt, from Cabot, and, been a farmer my whole life. Moved to Cabot when I was 3. My parents bought the farm there. Did dairy for a while, and now we do apples and maple primarily, some beef. And, yeah, interested in doing whatever I can to help out farms in our state.
Great. John? John O'Brien, starting my 4th week even together, so maybe 4th term here. Represent Windsor Orange 1, which is Royalton in my hometown of Tunbridge. Still live on the farm I grew up on, sheep farm mostly, but my wife and I have transitioned it to a wedding venue for agritourism. You can't make money sheep farming. And happy to be here. It's the only committee I've ever wanted. And right now I gotta go. There's a fair sort of field days mission. Zoom I gotta be on. Being from Tunbridge, of course I'm on it.
You should be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be back.
All right.
And as John's leaving, I'll just point out that he's been in the Ag Committee for his entire time of service in the legislature, so he's got the most people to hear institutional memory and the rest of us is glad. Sidonia, are you busy, and
Yes,
can I hold
no.
off on introducing you, or would you like to say hello now?
I started on committee assistants, last year. I, similar to John, made no money in farming, and after a decade of farming, switched to landscaping. I run a landscaping business and I'm doing good.
I'm gonna, once she isn't being distracted by the technology, so I need to talk a little bit more about the role of committee assistant and how we all work with her. I'm gonna ask the guests who are with us also to, when we go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves, just so we know who you are and what interest you might represent. So why don't we start here? Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Superman.
It's good to see you.
Nick Adams, working with Action Circles and legislative assistant for this session.
Michelle Berger, Action Circles. I'm a lobbyist, Nick's my note taker, and we represent several clients that will have interest in your committee, including the Working Lands Coalition, Built for Vermont, the Food Bank, Free Vermont, the Food Security Vermont Coalition. So you'll see clients in here. And also another colleague of mine at Action Circles represents the Conservation District. So that's my, she'll be able to.
Great. Good, and I won't necessarily ask you to introduce yourself every time you're here, but when we do a new person in, I'll try and get them to say who they are, just so we know. And that I might make the mistake, I know I did this last year, of asking you more than once to introduce yourself, so that could happen. Representative Lipsky.
Chairman Durfee, thank you. For those of us who either aren't familiar with what are called acronyms, and if you could explain what VPIRG means to some folks.
Certainly,
Thank you.
VPIRG is the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. We work on a lot of environmental issues and consumer protection as well, nonprofit. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thanks to everybody for the quick introduction, and I do want to have a little more time probably tomorrow if we can work it in to just hear more about what everybody's interested in doing this year. Sidonia, can you just say a little bit more about your role so we know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mostly I'm assisting the committee as a whole, as like an entity to do scheduling, do emailing, do the Zoom, the live stream. I'm like a fly on the wall, but also in here at all times. And yes, right now we're having technical difficulty because one of the desktops cords got unplugged from apparently all the stuff that's happening in the other rooms. And yeah, I think I mostly work with Chair Durfee and Representative Supernaut to schedule, but also I'm happy to answer any questions and be of assistance for some of you folks that are newer.
Good, thank you. So as long as we can see the red live symbol up there on the TV, we know we're good.
I'll try to turn this on as
Okay.
well, but on aim.
There's also audio, and we've discovered in the past at times that we're broadcasting but not being, nobody can hear us. That we've been chattering away and nobody's, heard us. So if anybody happens to see the microphone with the X through it that shows you're muted, you have to look up there and see that. You want to demonstrate?
And so also these. That white.
Okay. So if we're all working as a team, we can try and at least keep that to a minimum. Let's see, I've got a list of things here I'm going to go through, and we'll probably not cover, there are probably some things that I've left off the list. So we'll go through the list. Others may have ideas or things that you think that we should cover here in this first meeting. I guess I'll start by talking about sort of general schedules. We have time on the floor that it takes priority over committee time. So for example, this afternoon, we're going down to hear the governor's address. I think we won't come back to committee afterwards, just as an FYI. I don't know how long it will go, and we'll call it a day. Once we leave here, we won't need to come back. Generally speaking, the schedule it can be a little difficult to remember, but starting next week on Tuesday, at 10 o'clock, we'll start on the floor. The House will meet at 10, and then it will go as long as it goes, and then we'll come to committee. It typically will go maybe through lunchtime with the business on the floor, followed by party caucuses that are held in various locations. by the time that wraps up, it's usually close enough to lunch that we wouldn't try and get back here. So we would come at 1 o'clock and then have the afternoon on Tuesday. And then Friday is kind of a similar schedule. We start out on the floor of the House, and then whenever that's done, then we'll come into committee, and that might be before lunch on Fridays. I think Fridays will be a day where we don't stay as long as we might otherwise, so that we get home for the weekend. That will be dependent on how much work we have to do. So we'll see, but I think we can probably count on Fridays being a shorter day. So Tuesdays and Fridays, again, we start on the floor of the House and then we wind up here. And then Wednesday and Thursday is reversed. So we come here first thing. And that would be, I'm going to say 9:30. So just so you can be thinking, what time do I need to be here on Wednesday and Thursday? You may have something else that you're doing before that. There are often groups that meet for one thing or another earlier, like say at 8. And those meetings would tend to wrap up within an hour, so you have a little bit of time there. But if you're just coming in to start from committee, you count on 9:30 from now. And again, as it gets busier, if we find we've got more work to do, then it might make more sense to start at 9 rather than stay later in the day. So we can see how that goes. If for some reason we need to gather at a time that we hadn't expected to meet, you can expect a text if everybody uses phones. And I don't want to assume that everybody does. But if you have a phone and use text, then Sidonia will let people know that we're meeting. And since we're a pretty small group, it should be easy enough for me to go around and find everybody too. And with help from others, we could probably get that word out. So we had a piece of paper somewhere. Yeah, or pad. So I'll just send this around. It's just got a place to put your name and phone number and birthday. You're willing to share that.
We like to celebrate birthdays.
For celebrating purposes,
Oh.
yes, not for anything else. No. So
I know, last century, century before.
we will make an effort, and if everyone is willing to buy into this, we'll make an effort to start our meetings in a timely way. At least we'll close the door, and if we have a quorum, we'll start the meeting. We're a committee of 8, so quorum is 5. We have to have 5 of us to actually do anything. So just would ask that everybody consider that, trying to be on time. We will take breaks pretty regularly. I will try never to have us sitting in these seats for longer than an hour max without at least getting up to stretch. And I would say, generally speaking, if we're here for 2 hours, I would try to take a 10-minute break like halfway through. And then again, would ask that everybody just try to be back here on however the announcement of the break, whether it's 10 minutes or some other number. We should make sure that clock up there is coordinated with our timepieces, because even being off by a few minutes can confuse people. So we'll have to check that. And that clock seems to run out of battery that dies fairly regularly too.
It's 2 minutes fast.
Is it already? Okay. Let's see. We're not going to have any witnesses in today, but the work of the committee is largely taking testimony from Vermonters, sometimes non-Vermonters, who have something that is of interest to our committee, maybe a bill that we're working on. Maybe it's just more background information. So tomorrow, just for example, we've invited the state veterinarian to come in and give us an update on the avian flu situation, which some of you might have heard about in the news. Yeah. So there's no bill associated with that. It's just let's hear what's happening and be able to ask questions. when we do have witnesses, and this probably goes without saying, but I will just say it. I personally feel like we want to treat any witness as a guest and treat them respectfully. Oftentimes they will come in with opinions that don't necessarily match ours. And that's fine. We're here to try to get as much information as we can, and we want to solicit a wide variety of opinions and collect the facts. I learned in my first session as a legislator that a good rule of thumb is that we ourselves are not the witnesses. So we want to ask the questions of whoever's here, rather than debate with them or tell them what we think. We're interested in what they think. We'll have opportunity to hear amongst ourselves what we think. But we're not here to inform anyone of what our positions or opinions are. We've asked them to come in and share that information. I will always try to keep an eye out to see if anyone does have a question and wants to interrupt and ask me or ask the witness. I don't always do that. Sometimes I'm writing something, sometimes I'm looking over here. So anybody is welcome to nudge me and say, there's a hand up over there if you see a hand up for too long. I try not to, I try to treat the people at the table as witnesses and not people on the side and on the benches. Now, the folks who are with us today are not here to testify. I know that. Sometimes people will come in groups, and we can set up a separate chair at the end of the table and have two, but there might be 4 or 5 people who are scheduled, in sequence to testify. And it can be tempting to sort of jump over to somebody who's not in the witness chair. I try not to do that, just to try to keep things a little under control, but also so that the camera is on the person who's speaking and that we can not lead anybody to believe that it's okay to pipe in from the sidelines, which sometimes happens also. So I just would ask that if you want to talk to somebody who's not in the witness chair, we can invite them to come up and do that. Certainly do that. And try to just maintain the order that way. Let's see. Visitors. Okay, we will be, as I said, 8 people. We have a table that's built for more than 8 people. We had 11 fairly comfortably around the table last year. Maybe it was a little crowded. And we may end up with a smaller table, and that would be okay, or we may end up with this table. Normally, the ranking member would be seated up here, and Leland very graciously suggested that since we have all this room, maybe he would be happier sitting here. And Jed also very graciously said, I wouldn't mind moving down a seat. And knowing that once you've got a seat, it can be difficult to give that up. I appreciate both of those gestures. So for the time being anyway, we could try this. Leland, at any point, if you feel like you would prefer to be up here at the table, you're more than welcome to pull around. And
If this stays, this is fine. It certainly gives you more room to.
Representative Graham and I last year were either elbowing or kicking one another, it seemed fairly regularly. And then my stuff would spread out into his area. So
My stuff would spread into his area.
Yeah.
We were 4 abreast.
it's actually a bit of a luxury, I think, to have.
Oh, it's wonderful.
To have this much space in this room too, which with all the windows is pretty nice. So. There are, under the benches, there are drawers that you can claim one and put anything you want in it. I don't know that we've got 11 of them or 8 of them rather, but
We have a lot.
yeah. So if you.
There's that one down there too.
Yeah.
There's 8 over there.
Okay,
I think there's 7 or 8. Yeah.
great,
Yeah, there's 12 drawers, so there's one. for all of us.
perfect, okay. Yeah, so if you've got things that you want to leave here, book overnight. I will say the room is not locked, the building is locked at, a certain point, and there's always security around. So I've never heard of anybody losing anything, but anyway, the drawer is an option. There was something else. Oh, yes. And something else that Sidonia had left in. So we're the Agriculture, Food, Resiliency, and Forestry Committee, and we notoriously, except when Michelle visited last year, don't have a lot of food sitting around. If you wander into any other committee room, you'll see snacks of one sort or another. And for, I don't know, whatever reason, we didn't have a lot of snacks here last year. So I don't know if this was your idea, Sidonia, but we have an envelope to the snack fund.
We had one last year too.
We did last year. Okay, it was just empty most of the time.
Well, I think it's like once a month or once every couple months. but
All
we
right.
would blend
If
it out.
anybody feels inspired and, well, if you feel inspired to bring food in, by all means, bring in something. Sarah. And if you want to contribute to the snack fund, entirely voluntary, that's up to you as well.
If you have any like dietary restrictions or allergies or things you really love, you can also add those to the back of the envelope. Like the peanuts, or maybe you love caramel walnut.
You guys like apples.
The ante's gone out.
Yeah, raw milk, actually.
Oh, I'd have to pull it out of the pipeline.
Sidonia, I'll let you take that and be in charge of
Great.
that. Thank you very much. We,
Rib pies all.
I'm a vegetarian, you don't need to get me a ribeye.
I can bring you rum. You can come to the farm and get it, and then we can sign you up to make sure we're doing it legally.
Oh, got it, yes.
we'll, speaking of food, we should also try and schedule before we get too far into the session of committee get together at dinner sometime if we can find a date that works for the group of us and find a location that works for all of us. We went out, we can go out to a restaurant if somebody has a place where they're staying in town that is big enough and feels like hosting. I've been on committees where we did that. Anyway, we'll find some evening that hopefully works for everybody. I know last year we ran into problems with, since we have farmers on the committee, people either needing to leave, at a certain time or not being able to get here in the morning because lambing was happening. There are all kinds of conflicts, natural conflicts. Maybe there was some logging going on.
We log 24/7.
Yeah.
Boy, he's trying right now.
Don't get me started. I signed up for this.
I don't know how the rest of you feel, and I'm happy really to sort of follow whatever the group feels makes sense, but some committees say, let's not eat while we're meeting on Zoom. Let's not eat lunch here, or let's not, be feeding ourselves. Other committees don't seem to have a problem with that. You're welcome anytime to come and sit here during lunch break and any lunch here. But if we'd rather not be eating on camera, then that's, again, I think the committee can figure out how you feel about that, and we can think about that. Okay. The room for, when we're not meeting officially, certainly come in and feel free. You can sit here and talk and chat.
I add something to that.
Please do.
Well, for the most part, the camera isn't on normally during lunch. But then sometimes I feel like this happened a couple times last year where like I would run to the bathroom and then a meeting would end, but then people would assume that the video had stopped. So always be mindful to make sure if the meeting ends and I'm not here, just the camera's still rolling. And if anything does happen where like the camera's still rolling and you said something you don't want on air, just let me know. And there's wizards behind the scenes that can like splice it out and take it off of the permanent record.
Okay. Sure, that will never happen.
Never.
Representative Lipsky.
It just for the new members on the committee that, and being on the Ag, Food Resilience, Forestry Committee, there is a caucus called the rural caucus. And I think it's relevant to most folks here, particularly working class people, that I would make a point of inviting you to attend. It's very meaningful to our communities and constituents why we're here. And I don't know when they will meet. It's a tripartisan committee, like it's traditionally 8 o'clock Thursdays, or sometimes the Guard Veteran Affairs Caucus also met. Maybe they would overlap some, but that's something I found very helpful, connecting our work to all of rural Vermont. And you don't need to be from a rural community to be on that caucus with folks from Colchester. Anyway, it's an invitation.
Yeah, I
You
wouldn't
know.
be surprised if we all get an email sometime in the next few days with announcement of where and when that caucus is meeting. Okay, I'll just say a few words about the agenda. So this is what the physical copy of our agenda will tend to look like. There'll be a copy posted right outside the door that you can keep an eye on. There'll be a copy posted electronically on our legislative website. And we can talk a little bit about how you find that in a moment. We will usually get a first draft of the following week's agenda out by Friday before we go home. And the three of us will meet sometime each week. We'll need to figure that out, sit down and work on an agenda, a draft agenda anyway. It's not at all uncommon for us to go home on Friday without having every detail nailed down about every witness we're going to have come in, but at least we'll have thought about what are the bills that we want to cover, what are the topics that we want to look into a little bit more. And then Sidonia gets to work and makes phone calls and tries to collect those witnesses. And it will be an evolving live sort of working document. So I would say keep an eye on that if you're interested in what the topics are going to be, but also just as far as the timing goes. We may, for example, schedule something for a Wednesday morning at 9:30 and then find that that person can't make it, cancels at the last minute. So we might not be meeting. Things do change. If you have something that you would like to cover that doesn't seem to be showing up on the agenda, any of you can let us know. If you have a witness who you think would be interested in testifying on something that we're looking into, you can let me know. Sidonia's responsibility is to coordinate all those pieces of testimony. So she's the one who ultimately reaches out. Well, people will often contact me and say, I'd like to testify on a bill that I see you're working on. And I'll refer that to Sidonia. We'll talk about it and see whether we can schedule a person. And generally speaking, we will find time to hear from most people who have expressed an interest. If we can't, or if we've moved on from a topic, we'll always take somebody's written testimony. So if you ever have somebody reach out saying, I want to talk about a bill, at the very least, they can turn something in writing, and then we'll put it on the committee website. So that committee website, does everybody know how to find that? Have you gotten there?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Assembly page.
Yes, on the General Assembly page, there's a link at the top that says committees, and then you'll see the whole list of the committees, House and Senate. And if you click on the House committee page, then the whole new set of options opens up with that will have links to all the bills that are in our committee, all the testimony that we've taken. any testimony that's coming up for the day also is there. And we'll go through this again when we have our first witness, but oftentimes they'll if they have something they want to talk about, they'll put it up on the screen there. We can also put it up at the same time on our devices. So I think everybody's probably got an iPad or something issued by the IT. Yeah, so if you want to bring that, it's maybe easier to look at your own device than looking up on the screen. I find it can be a good idea. Sometimes people don't have it. There are times where the technology causes more trouble than it helps, and where we don't have it on the screen. So I think it's a good idea to have your iPad. So I'm sure there's a few things that I haven't covered that you're thinking of or wondering about. So I'll pause anyway and see what questions you might have just about like how do things work, or what can I expect tomorrow or Tuesday when we come in.
Since a question about, is there collaboration between committees? Like say if, one of the environment committee has a question regarding, it might be along the lines of farming or food resilience, do we collaborate together on anything? Or?
Yeah, I'd say that there's formal collaboration and there's informal.
Yes.
So if we have typically the formal collaboration would come when there's a bill that has been introduced and then referred to one committee that on the surface seems like, oh yeah, that's where it should go. But then if you look at it more closely, you say, oh, well, another committee arguably could also have something to say about this. And that's not uncommon. What might happen in that case is, I'm looking up here because we have two pieces of paper on the bulletin board there. Those are bills that were referred here this morning to this committee. And we might look at one of those bills and we might make some decisions on it. And then another committee might ask to look at it, or we might ask another committee to weigh in. We might do that by saying, just take a look at this, or we might go down onto the House floor and actually officially sort of send it to that other committee. There's a process for doing that. But then beyond either of those options, there's the, just talking with somebody in another committee that, happens, I think, sort of on the side fairly regularly. Good question.
So, Chairman Durfee, if a bill was before another committee and you thought it was pertinent if I thought, or Jay thought it was pertinent to this committee, how do we get it brought over to here for our consideration? Do we talk to you about it?
Yeah, talk to me about it. And there has to be, there's a little bit of, it can be a little bit of a gray area sometimes of whether it can go to another committee. Each committee, and this is also on the legislative website, has a list of the things that are within its jurisdiction. So you can look at that list and say, well, all right, it's agriculture. And this is a bill that deals with something to do with agriculture. Clearly, it belongs here. There might be other things like the H14 there is dealing with product testing, animal product testing. So there's I don't think there's any committee where you would see that committee clearly has jurisdiction here. So in this case, I think the speaker wasn't quite sure which committee it should go to. And in fact, she asked me whether I thought it would be appropriate to come here. And I said, certainly we can take a look. We might take a look and say, actually, when we dig into it, we might say, this isn't really related. It might make sense to go to the general committee, just for example.
And one other question. If we have we talked about the sludge. If we have something, because I'm new to this whole process, if we have something we think is pertinent to become, to be looked at, come right to this committee, can we talk about it beforehand and try to figure out how to write a bill to bring it forward?
So yeah, generally speaking, again, there are a couple of different, maybe three different ways that you can get legislation moving. And the most common one is to work with legislative counsel.
Yeah.
Have them draft a bill with your input. And we had 25 of those introduced today, and they went off to the various committees. There'll also be plenty of situations where a committee, for whatever reason, starts a conversation. Somebody brings something of interest. We get somebody asked to testify on something, and it sparks an idea. And then the committee can put a bill together, a committee bill. And so I would say, I would recommend and pretty strongly recommend that if anybody has something that you're interested or the constituent is interested, that you talk to Ledge Counsel first and see whether they can get something drafted. Don't know off the top of my head what the deadline is for that. Somebody here might remember. We don't have all session to do that. We have to get a request in before a certain date.
So close to the end of January, but then there's the short form. Anytime after.
Yes, yeah. So talk a little bit about that. Maybe you've done short form bills.
Short form bill is just that. It just basically states what your concern is, and it doesn't go into any detail. And if it's something that's interesting and you do want to follow up on it, then it can become more detailed. A lot of times it's put in just at a constituent's request, and they do it after the deadline for regular ones. And sometimes it goes someplace, and a lot of the times it just stays there, but you can tell your constituent that, yes, I did put a bill in, but it did not get active.
Representative Lipscomb.
A follow-up on Richard's question about procedure or protocol. So it has to do with, I'm going back to my first week or so, my very first session. And this came from a constituent, nothing to do with ag, food, forestry, had to do with raising the threshold of valuation for income sensitivity. There was a lot of concern as real estate values were rising and the state had lowered the threshold. I was pressured to do something about that. So not knowing anything about protocols, I went to Ledge Counsel. I did not go to nothing to do with ag. So I think my question to you, David, for all of our advice, that's our responsibility to represent our constituents. Go in that building over there, which is where Ledge Counsel is based. I can't tell you how gracious they are. You can come as the most naive person in the world, and no, I was in those shoes, and I was always treated respectfully, and they would find the specific counsel might be helpful. And they treated you very respectfully.
You don't physically have to go, though. You can make a phone
I guess
call.
you could, if you're pretty good on a telephone, you could. I do better face to face with people, but
yes, they are very, very willing to help. That's their work. They've actually relocated the staff offices, I think, to that green building over there. So if you do want to actually visit them.
thanks, I'll be knocking on the wrong door.
Yeah, I think so. And that also goes for, there were offices in this building that they've moved out as well. So I think no Ledge Counsel is in this building anymore. And I think they're all over there. I haven't been there myself yet, so I'm not sure.
And as a follow-up on that protocol, if it does have to do with agriculture or our realm, do you prefer us to talk to you about that first, or can we take the initiative of?
You are certainly entitled to take the initiative without talking to anybody. And if you do, but you're also more than welcome to talk to me if you have questions. And at some point, in fact, if there's a bill coming along that maybe hasn't come from this committee, I might reach out to them just to find out a little bit more about it. It's not unusual at all if you're introducing a bill as a legislator to talk to the committee chair and maybe others in the committee just to let them know that something you're working on, and you may have done that last year. I don't remember, but that's not at all uncommon. Yeah. What else did I not think of to ask?
Yeah, I just have a very specific question that maybe doesn't have a very specific answer, but in terms of when we break for lunch, I like to go to caucuses, and I also like to meet with an intern, like in that lunch hour, we have a break. Is there a particular time that in general we're free from 12 to 1, or do we tend to break at 12:30? Like, what's your general pattern, particularly like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I guess?
Yeah, I think we'll tend to break at 12.
Okay.
So that 12 o'clock to 1.
Yeah.
If we are able to get out of here a little before 12, in fact.
Yeah.
If for no other reason that the lunch line that gets long very quickly. For those of you who might want to use the cafeteria for lunch. But yeah, I think 12 to 1.
Okay.
And that's when some of the caucuses, like, for example, the rural caucus, I'm not sure when, but they might be meeting during that hour, yeah. And then when the floor, not today, that red flashing light is telling us that we've got 10 minutes to get downstairs, but that will usually be at 1 o'clock on days when we're meeting in the afternoon as well. So
But there's another color too.
tell us about the other color.
I believe it's the green on the top, and that's for the Senate. We don't worry about that.
Oh.
Yeah. And those are located around the building. So if you're in the cafeteria, there's one. Probably the Ledge Lounge has one.
Not sure. In the cafeteria for sure.
Yes.
And if we fail to heed those blinking lights, Molly Moore tends to come up here and herd us along.
Yeah.
With serious.
This is very.
Yes. Yes. I skipped over that. So we have, each committee has, in addition to the chair and the vice chair and the ranking member, has a clerk that we will select. And the clerk has a few duties. We used to have a lot more duties in the days before technology, yeah. But now it's essentially recording votes when we vote on a bill. And there's a process, and it's fairly straightforward. But it's the clerk's job once we choose the clerk. And the clerk is the clerk for the 2 years that we're here. So if anybody's interested in possibly doing that, you can let me know. It was Representative Pearl last year who filled the role admirably, except when he wasn't here. Having to go home and not milk, I guess, but he had duties. So when we ran late, which when we're taking a vote, it's often, we've been talking a long time and then, it's getting late. In any case, if anybody wants to take on that role beyond the 3 of us, we can't do it.
I would certainly be immodest and offer myself for the role of clerk.
Okay.
As among others,
I think-
you might consider.
Well, you can lobby the group because I think we'll all make that decision and.
I vote for you.
There needs to be a most, anyway,
Okay,
I have served sharing and clerking.
You sat right next to Henry, so you probably
I watched.
saw what was happening,
some of
yeah,
his
yeah.
For fun.
Yeah. You won't be called.
I don't ask for many honors, so hopefully humble enough.
Good, so,
So these are files that we can store our,
yes,
what's going on in this year.
yeah, you have, right, you can, use those file folders, there probably is more. So do we have other, like, office supplies
In
somewhere?
that drawer, top drawer.
Yeah.
I will, once they make, I think I have to special order it, but the sheets that Henry had last year with everyone's name on it, I'll print those out. We can put them right in your little.
Thank you.
To the clerk, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so yes, you have access to this whole.
As I did.
How embarrassing, Jay, you called it.
You know, I'm observant about, human behavior and threats.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and, we'll be back tomorrow at, what time, 10:30, did we say? Planning on 10:30 here, but it'll depend on when the floor finishes, so look for a text.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Chairman.